What made you believe in the paranormal? When I was younger, my mom used to invite random neighborhood children over for dinner and parties so they could eat. At my sister's birthday party, everyone was outside getting ready to hit the piñata. My father noticed a girl sitting inside the house, staring out the window at us. We have a large window beside the front door. He told me to go inside and ask her to come out and join the party. I ran up the walkway, looking at her through the window as I went towards the door. And then as soon as I passed through the doorway, she was gone. My dad thought she had fallen. There's a couch in front of the window, so he thought she fell on the couch. I looked around, but I couldn't find her, so I told my dad. He helped me look for her, but still nothing. No one else saw her except me and my dad. My mom said she didn't recall inviting any girls with our description of her. We forgot about it until some years later. My dad and I were sitting in the living room watching TV. From my dad's armchair, you can see into the kitchen a little bit. We were talking about the show we were watching when my dad suddenly got quiet. He motioned for me to come over to him and told me to look at the microwave. I saw that girl's reflection in the microwave, exactly the same as before. I ran into the kitchen and my dad followed, but again, no one was there. We were both pretty spooked, so we went out for ice cream until my mom came home. I thought it was a neighborhood kid playing a prank on us the first time, but seeing her the second time, unchanged in our kitchen many years later, made me start believing in ghosts. When I was 18 and living on my own for the first time, I kept waking up and seeing a woman with matted black hair sitting on my bed and smiling at me. A creepy smile, not a nice one. She scared the shit out of me. One night, I woke up and she was there. She slowly held up her hands and they were grotesque. It looked like third-degree burns covering them. I was talking to my mom and mentioned it, and she just said, "That's weird. She hasn't been around since you were a kid. Don't encourage her." She shows up every now and again, sometimes in nightmares. Sometimes when I wake up at night, she's at the foot of the bed, being creepy. I've had roommates who have seen her too, without me mentioning it to them before. I just ignore her. I was driving home late at night from a double shift, so admittedly I was tired. I had my radio blaring to keep me awake as I was driving through the backwoods on a road that I had learned to take as the occasional shortcut. During the day, the road was busy and congested, but at night it was always empty, save for a stray deer or raccoon. I'm driving, jamming out, and admittedly speeding. I take a corner too quickly, and there in front of me was a young girl, about 19 or 20, with long, dark hair, wearing jeans and a light-colored blouse. For a split second, I saw her eyes reflected in the headlights, saw the look of shock and fear on her face, and swerved hard off the road and into a ditch. There was no way that I didn't hit her. I jumped out of the car and started walking back to the spot I had last seen her. I flagged down a passing car to tell them to call 911. This was in the days before everyone had cell phones. Cops and EMTs came, but there was no one. No body. No girl. I was given a sobriety test on the spot. I honest to God thought that I, at the very least, badly hurt someone. But I won't lie. The thought of jail time had me in a panic. I got home much later than I should have, and my wife is waiting for me. I'm shaken as I can still see the girl's face in my head. As I recount the story to my wife, her face goes white. She runs upstairs, grabs a yearbook, and tells me to flip through the senior pictures. On page 3, there she was, the girl from earlier. I ask my wife if she knows the girl or if she has her family's number. That's when my wife informs me that the girl died 3 years prior in a hit and run around that exact curve. I wasn't from the area, so I had no way of knowing that the girl I picked out of a lineup of seniors was already dead. To this day, I still wonder what happened. Was I tired? Had I heard her name or seen her face on a memorial newscast or clipping and not registered it? Or had I actually encountered the most terrifying event in my life? I'm not sure what it was, but it is what I believe happened. I am a man of logic and science, but I can say this. I can still see her face lit up by my headlights clear as a goddamn bell. My childhood best friend had a Rottweiler named Tyler, who passed away a few years before we started hanging out. One time, I spent the night at his house and woke up in the middle of the night to a Rottweiler staring me in the face. I thought it was the new Rottweiler he had, so I went to pet it, but my hand just went right through it. I told him about it the next morning, and they said it was normal for them to see or hear him still roaming around the house every once in a while. I've had a few paranormal interactions since, but that was the one that solidified my beliefs. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Let's continue. My husband and I live in a 100-year-old house. It's always been a little creepy, like hearing people talking in another room but there's no one there. But a couple of years ago, we had two really good hauntings that totally convinced me the paranormal is real. The first thing that happened was when I was sleeping on the living room floor in front of the TV because I hurt my back and was trying to get it to unkink. I woke up at 4 a.m. and I heard the mantel clock chime 4. I'm sure I was awake because I watched TV for a few minutes. I then heard my husband walk into the room behind me, pick up the comforter, and spoon me with his arm thrown over my waist. After a couple of minutes, it was like his arm weighed a ton, and he was throwing a lot of heat. Just about then, I heard my husband start snoring in the bedroom. I was freaking terrified. I counted to 3 and threw the cover off and ran. I woke him up and we looked, but there was no one else in the house. The second time, we were both asleep in the bedroom at about 4 a.m. again. My husband says he woke up to hear two little girls talking. He could hear that they were playing jacks. He could hear the ball bouncing and the metal sound of the jacks on the wood floors. One of the little girls says to the other one, "Watch this," and she goes, "Mama, Mama." I sat straight up, still asleep, and said, "What is it, baby?" Once a mom, always a mom, right? The little girls laughed because it worked. So he kind of shook me awake, and I looked at him and then at the doorway where the little girls were. They looked real, except their outlines were wavering and they were almost black and white in color. They saw us both looking and laughed. Then the older girl grabbed the little one's hand and they walked right through the bedroom wall and disappeared. We still have little things happen all of the time. There's a ghost dog here that you see in mirrors, but not when you're looking directly at the spot. It rubs up against the beds. Then, a couple of months ago, I heard my son walk into my room. I was sitting at a desk not facing that direction. He yelled, "Mom, hey!" So I said, "What?" and looked up. There was no one there. He was in his room on the computer with headphones on, so it couldn't have been him. The arm thing freaked me out so bad I've never slept in the living room again. It was too damned creepy. I believe in the paranormal only because I've directly seen lots of things that I absolutely cannot explain away with conventional science, despite really, really wishing I could. The worst was the haunted as trailer in Montana. I wish I could point it out on a map. I'm sure the family would love to sell it to scientists to study since they can't exactly live in the dang thing. I only slept there because I was homeless and it was cold out. You know that scene in horror movies where nobody is in the kitchen but all the cabinets and drawers are opening and slamming shut? The whole place just going bonkers like the kitchen is having a tantrum? I've seen that in real life. Whatever lived there was very angry. It's the only place I've ever slept where I actually ran out the door screaming in terror. This happened when I was 6. I am nearly 50 now, so my memory is a little hazy. I had a friend the same age as me called Kelly. We used to hang out with other children who lived on our block. One afternoon, Kelly knocked on my door. I answered, and she asked if I could go to the corner shop with her to get some bananas so we could make a milkshake. Before I could answer, my stepmother called down the stairs to say I had to clean my room and was not going anywhere. Kelly kind of shrugged and said she was going anyway, and that was the last I saw of her. Early evening came, and her mother knocked on every door looking for her. All of the dads got together and went looking for Kelly, too. It got later and later, and when I went to bed, she had still not been found. In the early hours of the morning, I heard a noise outside my bedroom window. When I looked out, I saw a policeman was sat on the wall, sobbing and being comforted by another policeman. I watched for a while, and then went downstairs. My dad told me Kelly had been found dead. I later found out Kelly had been murdered by one of the older boys who hung out with us. I had to give a statement as I had seen Kelly the day before. Later, police told us that Kelly had been killed hours before she knocked on my door, and that my recollection of events was impossible. The man who owned the corner shop said Kelly had never come in to buy bananas. I'm pretty sure the police thought I was lying, and that my stepmother was either lying as well or mistaken about what she'd heard. From that time onwards, I believe that Kelly came to visit me one more time before she left for good, and since then, the idea of the paranormal has just seemed normal. I still don't believe in ghosts, but I did have a strange experience. I had a cat who I found in a ditch many years ago. She was cute and I pet her, so she followed me back to my home. I opened the door for her and she went in. She was offered the opportunity to go back out, and she did for a moment, but then came back in. I've had many pets over the years and loved them all, but this one was different. She wanted to be near me all the time. She followed me up to bed every night and purred me to sleep. Unfortunately, she died fairly quickly. I barely even had a chance to say goodbye. I knew she was ill, having been diagnosed with hyperthyroidism, which cat owners will know is not a good thing to hear. She had taken a turn for the worse, so I thought her treatment wasn't working. On examination, they found tumors in her stomach and liver. She had been dealt a mortal blow and was only going to suffer. I decided to put her down. She even meowed one last time before the end. I buried her in the yard to keep her close and tried to go to sleep, completely beside myself with grief. As I lay down, I heard something familiar. I live in an old house and my bedroom doesn't have a door, so I installed one of those plastic sliding doors. The slats make a telltale clacking sound when they're disturbed, like they did when a cat pushes in between them and the doorframe. I heard this, and a moment later, I felt the foot of my bed compress and could feel the mattress deform around my feet, up beside my legs, and roughly to my hips. I looked, but there was no cat. I don't know how to explain this. I don't believe in ghosts, and I'm sure grief can cause some pretty significant psychological disturbances. Even typing this now, years later, makes my eyes well up with sadness for my lost friend. I could write off the sound of the plastic slats as a breeze or a hallucination, but to feel my mattress deform like that, in exactly the way she used to circle my feet and come up beside me, I don't know what to think. One day I was visiting a friend. As I walked in, there was a woman in the living room. I looked over and she smiled and waved. When I waved back, she faded away. My friend said, "Oh, you saw her too?" I did not know what to say. His mom told me the woman who lived in the home before them died after a long illness. She loved that house, and they are happy to share it with her. That was when I really started getting interested in ghosts and the paranormal. I'm still not sure if I believe, but there have been some weird things in my life that I can't explain. When I was 5 years old, I woke up during the night and my grandma was standing at the end of my bed, wearing a teal blue skirt and a matching blouse. I remember that it was summer and the sky was still light but not light enough for me to read, so I guess it was about 9 p.m. I sat up, she put her finger to her lips, and I rubbed my eyes a couple of times. When I looked back, she was gone. I just snuggled back under my covers, thinking how nice it was to see her because I hadn't seen her for ages, and I hoped she would still be there when I woke up. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. My mom had been crying, so I asked her what was wrong. My grandma died the night before. She had been crossing a road after her bingo session, at about 8:30 p.m., 60 miles away from where we lived. She had a massive brain hemorrhage in the middle of the road and didn't even make it to the other side, let alone to my house, 60 miles away. She was wearing a teal blue skirt and a matching blouse. I work in healthcare. I know that we're supposed to be all about the science, but there are times when I hear a woman crying in the halls that isn't there. Lights will flicker when someone passes away. One time our wander alarm just started going off for no damn reason. It's incredibly loud, and at 3 a.m. it's not exactly a calming presence. As I walked down the hall to turn it off, I noticed that a patient had passed away in their sleep. There's one particular bed that patients don't live long in once they are assigned there. They absolutely refuse to get assigned that bed, despite it being in a sought-out spot. I've seen a lot of people die, and I have seen and heard a lot of things I can't explain away. but it never feels evil, just a presence. I should note that every time someone passes away, we open the window a crack and take down the mirror above the sink. We don't want anyone to get stuck here. At my old house, growing up, we always saw a shadow figure, and it made itself known. It would take up a whole doorway or stand on the stair landing. This one happened at my best friend's house in her basement. She and I were watching a movie when we both stopped and looked in the same direction. I started seeing splotches of black, kind of in the shape of a person floating. But once I could make out one splotch, it disappeared and another reappeared. I could and couldn't see it at the same time. I have no idea how to describe it. Turns out, my best friend saw the same thing. Even with all the stuff that happened in my childhood, that last one really solidified my belief in the paranormal. About 5 or 6 years ago, my mom was at work and a woman she never met comes up to her and says, "You need to go to the doctor and get your right side looked at." My mom wasn't showing or feeling any signs of anything wrong, so she was super confused. But she's also very superstitious, so she went to the doctors. Lo and behold, she had a cyst the size of a grapefruit that was about to rupture. I don't know how that lady knew, but I've been a pretty firm believer since. This incident made me question what was real and what wasn't. I was 8 years old. My brother was 6. We had been playing video games in my room while my dad and mom watched football downstairs. For a while, we had lots of fun. That was until I had a really bad chill down my spine. I shrugged it off before I noticed my brother get a chill as well. He continued playing the game, so I just thought, if he wasn't worried, then neither should I be. Everything went well, but not for long. My brother paused the game. "Do you hear that?" he asked. I then heard a humming sound of what seemed to be a little girl. I said, "The humming, right?" He nodded. The humming was coming from the hallway right outside our room. We began to be very nervous because my brother and I were the only children in the house. The door was shut, so thankfully we did not see anything. After a few seconds of the humming, it stopped, and then we heard footsteps from the attic. The thing about the attic, though, is that nobody ever really goes up there. Once the footsteps stopped and nothing else happened, we opened the door to see only the hallway. The next day, we told our parents in great detail what had happened, and they did the whole parent thing, saying, "Oh, it's probably your imagination." Needless to say, if I didn't believe in ghosts before, now I do. I can't say it really fully pushed me over the edge, but it made me, to use a double negative, not believe. I grew up with a Burmese mountain dog. Anybody that knows them knows they're calm, gentle giants. Mine never once in his entire life barked or growled at anything. He was very calm and stoic, until one night he wasn't. I was about 15, home alone with the dog, and he just lost his shit. He looked around the room, let loose a growl that absolutely thundered in his chest, and started barking like mad. He had stood up and was in a threatening pose, his hair all straightened out and laid flat. He was ready to go. It was pure, pants-shitting terror for what felt like 1,000 years. Then, he just stopped. His hair mussed back up and he padded over, dropped his mouth in a big doggy grin, and licked my face. If it was a demon or something, it didn't want to f*** with my dog again. This is about the last time I saw a spirit, and the only time I saw one so clearly, a few years ago. My husband and I were house hunting, and we were interested in this nice, single-story home in a good neighborhood. We called the agent and asked to view the house. When we went there for the appointment, the agent introduced us to this older man who was the owner of the place. He was sitting in his armchair and didn't get up, but nodded in our direction. We toured the living room, family area, and huge, beautiful kitchen with gorgeous wood cabinets. I noticed lots of family photos of grown-up kids and grandkids. The place had a warm feel to it, but felt a little sad and empty at the same time. As we headed toward the bedrooms, the hallways suddenly seemed cold and dark. All the lights were blazing in the house, as is normal for a house being shown. But I couldn't shake the feeling of cold, dark sorrow as we walked down the hallways toward the bedrooms. As we approached the master bedroom, the agent informed us that we could look around the bedroom, but the owner had requested that we not step inside it as he was still living there. The agent then opened the door and stepped aside so that we could poke our heads in and have a look. At this point, I was feeling unusually cold and sad. When I looked through the doorway, I saw this older woman standing just beyond it, staring back at my husband and me. She appeared as though I was seeing her through a veil of water, with colors faded and outlines blurred. She was just standing there. This aura of inexpressible sorrow flowed from her. At that moment, I knew that she was the old owner's wife and that she was sad because he was suffering so much after her death. Suddenly, she was sitting at the foot of the bed, looking at her hand that was gently smoothing the covers. She told me wordlessly that this bed was where she had died after a long illness, and her husband had never left her side. She slowly raised her head, looked directly at me, and I heard her words in my head. "How can I leave him when he is so sad and lonely? It hurts so much to see him this way." My husband grasped my shoulder and I was shocked out of my daze. He turned me around and was looking very concerned because I was crying hard, tears streaming freely down my face. I babbled that the owner's wife was here and that she couldn't leave because he was so sad. My husband had seen nothing but gave me the car keys and told me to go wait in the car while he finished up with the agent. I sat in the car and sobbed for a good while. When he came back, he asked me what I had seen. I told him pretty much what I'd described earlier, and then I asked him if the agent said anything. He had managed to find out that the old man was selling his house to move in with his son, as his wife had recently passed from cancer. He tried to find out if the wife had passed in the house, but the agent had not answered and changed the topic. This experience affected me deeply in many ways. I learned that the departed have a place to go to, and that not coming to terms with our grief affects not only ourselves and our living loved ones, but the fate of the departed as well. We never did end up getting that house. And that concludes today's true Reddit scary stories that made people believe in the paranormal. If you have your own scary story, share it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. This is Reddit Story Hour. Stay curious, stay kind, and see you in the next video.